You're listening to the Mark Bradford Alchemy for Life podcast.
30,000 foot view? What? Hey there, welcome back. Have you ever heard the phrase, taking the 30,000 foot view? What does it mean to you? What does it mean when someone says you need to take the 30,000 foot view? I would assume your brain goes to, well, I just have to take a step back, right? Well, clearly 30,000 feet is 30,000 steps back. You know, I like cliches and memes and phrases, but I like the ones that you can sink your teeth into, which of course is an idiom, thank you. But the 30,000 foot one always bothered me because even though it's been used in the past to describe sometimes my outlook on things in a way that really made me happy, it's not very accurate, and it only describes sort of a part of what makes that kind of powerful. So the way that people normally see 30,000 foot view is well, you gotta consider the big picture. Okay, and then what? What do you mean then what? Well, then what? How long do you do that for? How long do you consider the big picture? And is that your only job? Should you always consider the big picture? What about zooming in, as they say, right? What if you only what if you want to look at things through a microscope? Can you do both? Aha! That's today's podcast. I'm going to warn you that it's going to be kind of a complex one. We're going to talk about a lot of things that could probably be separated into multiple podcasts. It could even be the basis for a book. So let's get to the beginning here. The beginning is you have a task, or you're managing a number of tasks, or a career, or a job, or a project. In most people's cases, it's probably project, right? So you're managing a project, and then you decide that you're just kind of stuck, as they say, in the weeds, which means you're going to get stuck on the minutia of things. You're getting stuck on the details and things, and you need to back up from that. But the problem is we're never told how far to go back and how often to come back to the views. How often do we adjust our little viewfinder so that we go from microscope to binoculars to telescope? How do we do that? And how often? And what happens is we typically get focused on a task, and then we get caught up and go, why isn't this going well? Why isn't this happening? Even something as innocuous as an art project, which isn't very innocuous if that's what you do for a living, right? If what you're depending on for income for the next 6 months is something you're simply not working on, well, that's a problem, right? And you can replace painting with show, with movie, with managing a sports team, with all sorts of things that you're kind of stuck on. And it can very much be dependent on the fact that you are stuck on subtask number 5 when you should be up 2 or 3 levels from that. Or it could be that you are at your 30,000 foot view going, everything's fine from up here, and this other thing is just on fire, but you can't see it because it's just this little thing. But once you get to the little thing, you'll see that that's going to cascade upwards quickly. So do you see why I said that this could get complex? Because you're kind of thinking, well, Mark, what are we talking about here? Are we talking about just managing a project and zooming outwards and just making sure the project's okay and then zooming back in again? Yes. But we're also talking about when you do it, how often you do it, and why you do it. So when you do it is basically based on, at the bare minimum, a schedule of keeping yourself aware. Because as a project manager, as a conveyor belt operator, as a creative, all of those people bizarrely have the same thing in common, which they get stuck doing a thing and they ignore the other things. Now, granted, if you're in corporate America and your day is all filled with meetings, but not enough time to complete any of the things you promise, which is corporate America, then you may have the information, but you don't take any action on it. If you are creative, you're stuck in doing the thing you love, which is creating. If you're a project manager and you're managing a project, the thing you may love is looking at the thing as a whole and looking at Gantt charts all day long and spreadsheets and things. But you may forget to meet with people individually. You may forget that you have a weak link on your team, and that weak link might be you, because people are kind of hoping for more direction or something like that. Do you see how this is in like 28 directions? Do you see how this can get way out of hand and complex instead of me just saying, hey, you know what, gang, you know what, crowd? All we have to do is every so often take a step back and look at everything as a whole. I did a podcast on that. I did a long podcast on that. You do have to do that. You do have to look at things from far away, and then you have to go back in. As someone who's done full stack web development, which I didn't know was a thing until people gave it a title, which is that you do everything from hand coding and coding things to, database administration, to designing databases and tables, to connecting all that stuff, to making things pretty, to designing artwork, to designing the prettiness of the site and making sure it all cohesively fits together. And that's basically how I created a dating site years ago from scratch in all aspects of it. And the way that I did that was to focus on task after task after task and say, well, hey, the database guy is going to need to know what these field names are, guy who's creating the website. Oh, okay, which was me. So that kept it a lot easier. I didn't have to keep calling or sending emails or having people argue on my team because I was my team. And that is one of the advantages of, being the center of the universe on things sometimes. There's a lot of disadvantages, but if you're creative listening to this, or somebody's doing a project, or somebody who's just kind of getting stuff done in their own world, you know that as well, that even if you are part of a team, you're still kind of your own person, and you still have to deal with being the bottom line. So results may vary, use as needed and directed, because I can't really in this podcast tell you exactly how to properly use the zoom out, zoom in feature of your brain. But I can tell you that you might be screaming for it and not realize it. You might be desperately trying to change something in your position at your job when you need to go to an entirely different company. You may need to stop working on a project because you're not ready to work on that project. And you wouldn't know that because you'd be so busy, again, in the weeds going, well, maybe if I just do this, maybe I'm stuck on that. Oh my God, I'm not ready to do this because of da-da-da. And those are two examples of zooming out. An example of zooming in is when you're working on a project and you're looking at it and the whole project is moving a lot slower than you think, and you can't seem to figure it out. Everything makes sense, and you zoom all the way in and you realize that your way of dealing with one specific part of it is really inefficient. Or the whole weak link concept, which is, a person on a team, and I'm not saying, get rid of the person. I'm saying this person has a task and they do it either very slowly or hesitantly, or they do it without authority because they're afraid of doing the wrong thing for the team when the team needs them to say, no, I need a number for you. Just tell me, is it 7? Well, it is 7, but is 4 enough? The team members don't want to judge the input. They just need the input. They just need you to say that, and they'll just run with it. And that's how your brain works with lots of other things in your life, where your brain's raring to go in 10 directions, but you're like, well, is it okay if we, is it okay if we work remotely on this? Is it okay if we do this instead? Yeah, that's fine. Just tell me. What do you want me to do? Just tell me and make a commitment to it. And that's an example of when you're zoomed out and you need to come back and zoom in. I understand that from the standpoint of homework on this one, and I do like to give homework sometimes because I like to give tangible, actionable items. This one's hard. So I guess all I can say for this one is, if you have something you're working on, and it could be anything from a personal relationship to a project to a career to what have you, and there's something about it that want to change, but you're so frustrated because you don't even know what you want to change, but you know it's not the way you want it to be. Try the zooming in and the zooming out. And you may just find the problem and happiness and results. So let me know. And thank you so much for listening. Hey there, thanks for listening. You know I always appreciate your feedback. Please keep it coming. 3 Voices is out. It's a fun read and only $9.99 US on Amazon. And as of this recording, it reached number 3 in experimental psychology. So thank you so much.